This is Porn Talk. Here is your host, Eric Zuzak.
Welcome back to Porn Talk. We are back. Get ready to be captivated by the remarkable journey of Sabrina Stratford. For 25 years, she forged powerful partnerships as a global business manager in the world of IT. But then she made a courageous decision to leave it all behind and take a stand against the harrowing reality of sex trafficking. So join us as we delve into the inspiring story of a woman who turned her passion for justice into a relentless pursuit of making the world a better, safer place. Welcome back, Sabrina.
Hi, Eric.
So in the last episode, we talked about a lot of the challenges and a lot of the negative things that you've experienced on your journey to stop sex trafficking. But what are some of the things, let's start with some stories. What are some positive stories, or maybe some people that you've helped, or some positive things you witnessed in Anchorage or here in the United States?
Sure, yeah. Well, I talked about the Downtown Hope Center, which is the women's emergency shelter in Anchorage, Alaska. And the way that they are making such a tremendous difference is, I mentioned that one of the things they do is they serve lunch to the homeless every day, soup and sandwich, about 300 soup and sandwich every day of the year. So they have a large kitchen. So if you can imagine a large building that has kind of like the cafeteria style kitchen, and then on the other side are 70 cots. And that's where the women are. So this lends itself to an opportunity. If you come into the emergency shelter, typically the women may be struggling with drug addiction. And so in order to conquer that, they have life programs that help them understand how to get off drugs, how to stay off drugs. But then, we all know that we have to stay active. So they are able to take a bakery or culinary program, and they can either go to the bakery and help bake the bread, that serves the sandwiches, or help make the soup. And then they serve, breakfast, lunch, and dinner to those women every night. So they've got this culinary program. So now the women are getting a skill. And then they also obviously have faith-based support, and so that the women can understand that they don't have to carry the burden themselves. And when I saw the women, who actually accepted faith or came to Christ, I'll just say it, they walked out of the door and had successful lives. If they didn't get involved in the program, if they didn't have any, faith, it was just like a revolving door. They would get better for a little while, but they'd go back out and get back on the drugs and get back with a sex trafficker and find themselves back in the emergency shelter in an endless cycle. But the good news is that so many times women who went through this program and, made something with their lives, that they did get better and they're contributing to society and happy.
That's fantastic. What about here in the United States? Any positive stories here in the United States?
It's harder for me to tell the happy stories, because what I do here is I do research to inform corporations about sex trafficking, and also an advocate for the human trafficking hotline in Colorado. So what we do is, if you dial an 800 number and you have questions about sex trafficking, or you're a victim or a survivor of sex trafficking, you can call this number and we have resources. So I still talk to several people a day who are victims or survivors of sex trafficking, but I'm only able to give them the resources and say, okay, here's some shelter, here's a number for a case manager, here's a number to help your family, whatever it might be, but I don't ever get to see what happens next. So that's really a struggle, is you kind of have to give it up and say, all right, I've done all I can do to help this person, but I don't get to know what happened with the happy story. Although there are, organizations that I've connected myself with, like the Hope House, who help teenage pregnancy. And you do get to see those happy stories. You do get to see that those women stayed safe and that they have families and that they've gone on to just have these terrific lives. So getting involved with your non-government organizations and nonprofits, that's going to be a big win for anybody.
Well, what if a guy's listening to this and he's like, why should I give my time to these organizations? And I'm just happy, living my life and watching porn. What would you say to a person like that?
It just doesn't work like that. That is just sticking one's head up one's rear and just ignoring reality. You just have to think about the porn industry. If you watch one video and you think that it's okay because that person is smiling and happy, that is not a depiction of what's really happening. I mean, think about what it took for that person to be in a pornography video. First they had to become vulnerable. They had to become victimized in some way. There is not one healthy, happy person that raised their hand and said, I'm going to go make pornography because that's just a great way of life. It just does not happen like that. It's not empowering. It's the absolute cornerstone of a vicious cycle. And if you're watching one video, that's feeding the industry that is 100% responsible for child sexual abuse material. And when I mention that term, we're not just talking about a 16-year-old, an 11-year-old, a 5-year-old. We are talking about infants who are being raped. And if you're watching pornography of an adult woman, you are feeding into the industry that 100% is behind infant rape. So congratulations, that's what you're supporting. That's what I would say.
Ouch. Oh. So on the other hand, let's say there is someone that is listening and he really wants to turn over a new leaf. He wants to quit porn. He wants to better his life. He wants to even perhaps do a part in ending sex trafficking. What could that one guy do? What difference could that one guy make?
Yeah, there are beyond your self-help, beyond getting therapy and understanding why you have that addiction, because, it is an addiction and it's just like any other addiction, whether it's to drugs or food, you have to address your personal issues of why do I have this addiction. But to just make it better, where sex trafficking might end, sex trafficking would end if people would quit watching pornography. If there are no buyers, sex trafficking would end. 100% of sex buyers have viewed pornography. Fight me on that one. 100%.
Yeah.
So, just think about, so what puts a person in this space of sex trafficking, and it's the vulnerabilities. So then you fight the vulnerabilities. So that's when it comes back to looking at those nonprofits and those non-government organizations that are fighting homelessness, that are serving survivors of domestic abuse, that are helping foster kids. Foster kids frequently end up as victims of sex trafficking. So just think about all the vulnerabilities and go serve those communities and to give them empowerment where they can get out of sex trafficking. And then at the very top level or the bottom down level, I guess I should say at the corporate level, corporations have corporate responsibility to look at their organizations, whether it's something completely unrelated to supply chain where, labor trafficking might be happening. Think about, when I think of my career, we had large sales teams. We were on the road a lot, and we would frequently hold sales conferences, for example, in Las Vegas. This idea of what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas is a real thing. And I've seen some very professional individuals behave badly because they were away from their wife or their family, and they owed it to themselves to go kick their heels up and go get a prostitute or whatever. All of that is contributing to the industry that is promoting, I'll bring it back, infant rape. I cannot separate the two. And so, speaking at the corporate level, it's informing your organization of their corporate responsibility to have a plan on how to address, how to identify somebody who might be a victim and how to empower their own employees. But then also, if they're a software company, what can I be doing to contribute, to technology that's going to be the good for artificial intelligence or the good for technology that can fight? And there are certainly examples of companies that are fighting the good fight.
Yes. You had mentioned that 100% of the traffickers or the people,
Fires.
yeah, have viewed pornography. And there is a interview with a serial killer. I forget his name. He was a famous one. Kind of the anyway. In the interview, he said that not everybody that watches porn becomes serial killers, but he said all serial killers watch porn.
Absolutely. I think it may have even been Jeffrey Dahmer, but yeah, I've heard that quote. Yeah.
So, sorry, someone just pulled in my driveway. So anyway, lost my train of thought here. So bringing it back to the person that's listening to this now. So if they are wanting to quit pornography, they should know that when they are watching porn, when they are clicking, they're voting for sex trafficking, they're voting for the sexual abuse of infants.
Absolutely. And I hope that that does something to their libido when they think of it that way. I mean, you may be watching two adults that look like they're consenting, but understand that you're supporting the industry, probably the same individuals that are filming, that are victimizing infants. You cannot separate them. It's just part of it.
Yeah. So Sabrina, let's take this in another direction. Sex trafficking, artificial intelligence. What do you see? Like, what hope is there? So, like, with the artificial intelligence, that's really a huge challenge. Like, what hope? Like, if someone's listening to this, like, oh, this sounds so depressing. Is there any hope? Like, are we all going down the drain?
Whenever, there's bad people behind the filters that define on a artificial intelligence chat that pedophilia is actually minor attracted persons. So there are bad people behind artificial intelligence setting the filters. There are also good people. And the good guys are doing good things, such as the Thorn organization. And they're using artificial intelligence to identify CSAM, child sexual abuse material. And when it identifies it, it gives it a digital fingerprint. So now it's marked forever. And so if it's on somebody's platform where it doesn't belong, like Instagram or Facebook or something like that, it can be identified. Now, it's up to Meta, the organization, it's up to Mark Zuckerberg to say, we are going to pay attention and remove this, it's up to Signal, the platforms that are pushing out, they're not creating the CSAM, but they are the platform where it's being sold, so they have to take responsibility too. But there are good guys who are using the technology to do good things. There's an organization called BARK, BARK, and they have all of the tools that you can use with your kids to keep them safe. 40% of kids who have seen pornography saw it at school. So they think that they're doing everything they can to keep their computers secure at school, and that's just not the case. And then, Eric, I also have to wonder, why do kids need the internet in the palm of their hand? Why can't they have a flip phone for emergency calls? It just blows me away that we're giving kids adult content in their hand unsupervised every day. I don't get it.
I wholeheartedly agree. You had mentioned the organization Thorn. Just for those that don't know, that organization actually was started by Ashton Kutcher and Demi Moore. That's and right. I don't know if they're involved in that anymore, but so kudos to them. And the tool Bark, actually, it's funny you mentioned that. I did a review of Bark that I'm going to be posting within the next week or so of that program. So if you go to my YouTube channel, you'll see a review of Bark. Bark is software that you put on your children's devices, and it allows you to make sure that everything's going well there.
Yeah.
But yeah, Bark is a great tool to help you if you have children. Be sure to check out Bark, and I get nothing from mentioning that, but it is a great tool.
Yeah, for sure. One of the challenges that we're going to find with using artificial intelligence for good is it always comes back to privacy concerns. And I understand that because, think about it. You could use artificial intelligence to identify anything, right? I mean, you could identify anything with an algorithm, but then it's just according to how much privacy do we want to give up for it to be effective. And so I think that that's going to be the struggle in building software is the privacy concerns. You could give a law enforcement organization, if they had the right to go into all of your data and use artificial intelligence, they could quickly find out, what good or bad you were up to, but then there's a privacy concern. So we're going to have to figure that out, and that's going to be an interesting battle.
Yes, absolutely. What would you say, again, to the guys that are listening to this that have listened to both these podcasts and they are they're ready to make a change? And I know, you're on the front lines there. You're not a porn addiction recovery coach, but just as a woman, and have all the experiences that you've been through and what you know about porn and sex trafficking, for a guy that's really struggling, like he really wants to stop, and just as a person, what would you say to that person?
I can't answer that question without getting spiritual again, Eric, because I believe that this is a spiritual warfare, that it's beyond it's beyond what we're even talking about, that it really is good versus evil. Just that understanding, seeing what I have seen, I understand that it is the worst of the worst that you can imagine. It as bad as you can think, the worst case scenario of a baby or something like that, we know that that's happening. And so to even think for a minute that if you're going to watch what you want on Pornhub or YouPorn or whatever, you think it's harmless, understand that you are contributing to an infant being hurt in that way. Or even, I'll tell one more story. There was a woman at the shelter. I'll give her first, Elizabeth, who came in, and she had been kept in a trap house. A trap house is they do drugs upstairs, and then they typically have a downstairs or someplace where they film the worst of the worst so that they can make money. And so Elizabeth, got hooked to drugs upstairs, but then they would take her downstairs, live stream, and then also recording so that it can be sold again and again, and you could pay. And see, that's the thing, dopamine, as you know, Eric, because you've been in this a long time, pornography is powerful because of the dopamine hit. You get that little pleasure hit, and then you want more. You want something more abusive. You want a younger victim. And that's the way it worked with Elizabeth. So as they were viewing her, they could pay more and more, hurt her more, knock her teeth out. And they did. They broke this woman. And then she came to the shelter. Well, she had split personality disorder. She couldn't talk to us without coming in and out of talking to us like a little baby, or going into this very dark place that was protective of her and, cursing us every way from the middle. That happened. That's just one story of one individual. But understand that that's what happens. You think it's okay to watch two consenting adults in pornography, but that is the world that you're feeding into. So just think of that, just think of that, and don't click.
Wise words. Well, what if someone wants to learn more about what you do or your work? How would someone do that?
Go to sabrinastratford.com. Sabrinastratford.com. And so I've got, the way to connect, some of the things that I've been working on, links to this emergency shelter in Anchorage that I was speaking of. If you come across organizations that you want me to talk to and promote them on my website, I will absolutely do that. So that's probably the best way to connect and take it to the next step.
Okay. And what if someone happens to be in the midst of all these things, the negative things we're talking about? How can they reach out for help?
All 50 states have a hotline, and there's also a national human trafficking hotline. And so just put that into your search engine, National Human Trafficking Hotline, or one for your state, and you can dial up. And so, if you called Colorado, you might talk to me, and I would pull up a resource directory, and whatever that person needs, food, shelter, case management, something for their family. A lot of our victims in Colorado are illegal immigrants who have a debt to pay, and they're having to pay it by sex trafficking. They got over here by a coyote bringing them over, and they have to pay back their debt with sex trafficking. A lot of our calls are that. So your resources for these human trafficking hotlines can help.
Wow. Well, Sabrina, again, thanks for having the courage to do what you do, because, to do what you did and face the people, like literally facing a sex trafficker, like head on, like, wow. So thanks for the work that you do. And I know what you said, the real heroes are the women that are in those
Shelter.
health shelters on the daily basis, but we gotta give you your credit where credit is due. So thanks for doing what you do. Thanks for being here.
My honor, my pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Eric.
Absolutely. And I'll close with this quote from Zig Ziglar, that you are what you are and where you are from what has gone into your mind. But you can change what you are, and you can change where you are by changing what goes into this beautiful, magnificent mind.
Thanks for listening. If you're struggling with porn or sex addiction, reach out to Eric at powerfuleric.com.